Hey, welcome back to the channel. We're going to look at this knife right here. Really cool Rough Ryder. And usually I plan my week. I have absolutely no plans whatsoever. But I got this in the mail this week, so I thought I'd show it. You notice these bolsters on it. It has fancy bolsters. And I like that. You know, some guys don't. But what I thought I'd do is maybe not only show this knife, but talk a little bit about the history of worked bolsters like this, how far it goes back, the different techniques to do it. So if you think you might find that a little interesting, go ahead and check out the video.
Did it, I can do it.
You're an old woman. They're young kids. Alright guys, welcome back to the Fortified Castle, and as I said in the intro, we're going to look at this little knife, but I'm going to go a little bit further and talk about these bolsters, how they do this, how they've traditionally done it, how far back it goes, and maybe that's your thing, maybe it's not, but it'll be interesting to find out a little bit about these fancy bolsters here at any rate. And I just want to before I do that, I want to show you this. That's really cool, isn't it? So this is a pocket watch, as you can tell. And I like pocket watches. And this was a gift from Patty's Potato Peeler. I'm sure you've been to his website. He needs no introduction. He is infamous and famous and a heck of a nice guy. And I just really appreciate him sending this to me. Has a fly fisherman there, and it reminds me of me and my dad going fishing. So I really like this. And little Remington. You see the Remington right there? So it'll be fun to have this with my Remington knife collection. So thanks again, Steven. And if y'all have never been to Patty's Potato Peelers, you ought to go watch him peel some potatoes, and it'll be fun. So, okay, back to this. Okay, so I want to say hi to all my viewers. Bonjour, privet, guten tag, hola, ciao, and konnichiwa to my foreign viewers. And we're going to go over this knife real quick. It is a Rough Ryder, really cool. Look at that little canoe there. Let's see. Looks pretty good down the back side there. It does have some really small gaps in it. Overall, this thing is really good. Okay, snap in. My camera don't want to work. I went on a hike this weekend to some falls, and it was awesome. If you haven't watched that video on the falls, you ought to check that out, because man, they were just awesome falls. This is a 3 5/8. You've got green bone here, nickel silver pins, nickel silver shield, nickel silver bolsters. If you open her up, nice frosted blade right there. A stroke of luck kind of goes along with the horseshoe Rough Ryder emblem. That's your number right there. 440, razor sharp steel. So I got poked last night, started bleeding, but not by this knife. Action on this knife is a little light, but that's okay. Nice pin blade. I don't think this thing's even been sharpened. I'm not an expert on Rough Ryders, and maybe one of you Rough Ryder experts can chime in. I think they started making these about 10 years ago. So right around 2013, 2014 maybe. And then I think they made them up to 2021, I think is when they stopped the series on it. But I got this thing off of eBay for $1 more than what they sold for originally. Pretty cool. Like this knife. So let's talk about fancy bolsters. So you really don't see these fancy bolsters too much. There's some effort, put in them. This is pretty fancy right here. This was actually taken off of a knife that was in a museum, and Smoky Mountain Knife Works copied the design and put it on this series right here. Probably goes back to the Gold Strike, the 1890s, 1880s. Somewhere around there is where that design comes from. But that's just a little interesting trivia there. And, most of the time this is what we get. If it's fancy, it's fluted. They call this fluting on the bolster. And you get a little bit of that with some various knives nowadays. This knife is not too old, and it's got some really good relief work on it. 2 different designs. Really well done. Very inexpensive knife. This knife was, I want to say $9. Might have been 12. Let's say $12. It's an Elk Ridge. But I like this stuff. I know it's not every guy's cup of tea, but you just don't see a lot of it really. But in the past, it was pretty popular. And so you can call this stuff a couple things. So you can call it a work bolster, a fancy bolster, different styles. Like with that fluting right there, they call that a crown bolster. And it's just flutes on it. But you can call it relief work, okay? Relief or repose. Although repose is a specific designed bolster, and we'll get into that in a minute. Here's an older design. This is a Schrade 506 model. Actually, it's a different model number because it's a scrimshaw, but 506 was their model for the Barlow, and you can see some really nice scroll work that Schrade put on there. And so there's a couple ways that you can do this. You can stamp it where they have a die that would have this design, and it just stamps down into the bolster, and then they clean it up a little bit. It also can be engraved, and so none of this stuff you're going to find on these knives is engraved. It's very expensive, but I'll show you some examples there. This is another one that dates to the early 80s, and really beautiful work here, made in Japan. This is a Parker knife. Really well done. They kind of got the enamel on the edge there. I just never cleaned it up, but pretty nice example of scroll work. But that's not all. I mean, this is one that's been worked. This knife is a David Yellowhorse, so probably dates to I don't know. I want to say 2014, somewhere around there, somewhere around there. And you can see he's ate out the bolster here, and I'd call this a worked bolster. Very attractive work, and he started doing that for Case back in the 70s. So Case actually has done quite a bit of this scroll work. I'm showing it to you now up there in the pictures. So Case has been involved with this work bolsters for quite a long time. This dates to the 80s right here. It's Nantucket Sleigh Ride. But you can see just the beautiful work here. And this is actually cut into it, so it's almost like engraven. And then they divoted the bottom there to give it that reflective kind of characteristic. Really nice. Kind of really surprising how often Case does this kind of thing. There's a lot of examples of Case, but when you get into custom knives, you get more of this, and it's actually engraved. And so we talked about stamping. Another way is to cast these, where they make a mold with this design on it, and the metal is actually poured into it, and then the mold removed, and you're left with this. Back in the day, another way to do this was called repose work. And so what repose work is this is a relatively thin piece of metal right here. You can see that right there. And they would make this design from the back by using a punch, and they would hammer out the design in the back. That's not what this is made from. This is a stamped bolster right here. You can see it's crowned, and then some nice design on it. Horse head on the other end. This dates to the between 1900 and 1920. But that repose work, that was a way to save on etching. This knife here is a reproduction. It's a famous reproduction, and it's a Edward Barnes and Sons, and this is really, really well done. So I've seen originals of these, and really the only difference, this has a few more grapes on it than the original. It's a little busier, right? The original, there aren't as many grapes. It's kind of easier to look at, I guess I would explain it. But that was originally engraved by Edward Barnes out of Sheffield, England. And so that knife dates to the 1860s. This is a repro of that knife. So that's the other way to make these, and that how they traditionally did it. So it was engraved. It takes a long time. It's very expensive. I've shown you in the photographs how they're still doing that today, mainly in custom knives. This is stamped into the bolster right here. This is a steel bolster, carbon steel bolster, and it has a design stamped into it, and that's pretty cool. But so they went from engraving to the repose work, where they punched these designs in from behind. A lot of these knives that you see that have relief work throughout the knife, that's how they were made. They were actually repose knives. And then later, around the early 1800s, they started using a stamp method where they actually put a stamp into the metal. And sometimes that's like a stamp and a cut on top. Sometimes the metal was pressed into the stamp. It just kind of, I guess it depends on the design, because you still have to clean this up after you make it. And then I think in the 20th century, around 1900, you start getting where they're casting these things, which was a lot easier to do, a lot easier to clean up. You can actually see the cut marks if you look close. Let's look at this up close. You see the cut marks up there around the top? So this has been stamped from the top down, and then they just clean it up in there. And so, of course, nowadays, they would be using what's that called? Okay. CNC machining, right? So a lot of this is laser done by CNC machine, water jet, and just the traditional milling method. Here's an example where the whole handle has relief work on it, and this has been this is engraved. And the way you can tell the difference is how sharp some of these lines are. You can tell they are cut out. Stuff like this, when you look at it really close, it's kind of rounded. So none of those edges are sharp. And that's because it's done by pressing into it. But engraving will have real sharp lines on it. You can see that right there. The intricate eyes that were done. This dates to between 1900 and 1920. It's a Bowie knife, actually. Pretty cool. Look at that. It's magnificent. It's a Bowie knife. So this is a gaucho knife. And you can see the clip right here. So it was meant to clip on your pants and take out hunting. And you get a little hunting scene there. Pretty cool. Look at the detail in that. Just absolutely incredible on this thing. This was made probably in Sheffield. AE and Company is a English company. Anyhow, that's all you need to know about bolsters. Pretty cool. I like them. A lot of guys probably don't. This is a really cool knife. I really like this knife. It's unusual. The horseshoe is unusual. It's well done. You know, this knife is well done. Looks good. That's really good frosting right there. It's not cheesy. Doesn't look. It's deep. Doesn't look like it's going to rub off. This knife has been used, and you can see there's somewhere on the bolster on this thing. See it right there from pocket use. See how it's worn? So whoever had this before me used it a little bit. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative. Like to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And I really appreciate all of y'all for watching and supporting the channel. Thanks.